How are you doing today?
I'm okay.
Thanks for meeting with me. The what do we got here? It's pretty fancy.
This is a decorative bowl that I made once. You can tell it's a decorative bowl because as a functional bowl it would suck.
It has a few holes in your
Yeah.
theory there. Yeah.
But this is just something I do as a bit of a hobby and a sideline. I do quite a bit of woodworking.
Okay.
And this is a small piece. And it's called an open turning, I guess. It's a lot harder than just a regular bowl to turn because there's gaps and dangers involved, as in parts of it can fly apart and hurt you. But
Don't tell your wife. Yeah.
well, she knows. But yeah, typically I do. Lately, I've been doing one major piece a year. That would be like a table or a island or whatever.
Must take a lot of time by yourself.
Yep. And so
Alone with your thoughts.
alone with my thoughts and the noise of the machines, but
Yeah.
I put on a set of headphones and
Good.
noise canceling things and think. And so, especially during the sanding stage, it's kind of mind numbing.
Okay.
But if you can activate your mind with thinking,
That's
can-
easier
you
said
can
than
go-
done. Most people don't
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
yeah, it's true. But yeah, I go out there as well as other things and just create. And like I said, it's only one major piece a year kind of thing. And
It takes time to do it right. So
yeah.
yeah.
So this is just one small
cool.
token.
It always
looks cool.
fascinates me how people spend their quiet times, right?
Yeah.
Some people are on a paddle boat, some people play sports, do music,
Yeah.
right? Some people build bowls with holes in them. Yeah,
So yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
a birch burl.
that's pretty neat.
And so that, of all things, that's from a deformity in a tree. And you, as a maker, you look for the deformity to find the beauty. And if you buff it up, it actually is kind of a little bit like a hologram. If you turn it, you can see the
Yep.
different
That's cool.
things.
Well, and that's the similarities between creation and redemption, right? And we see that
Yeah.
in God's mind. And so I imagine in that stillness while you're working, especially if you're sanding, you spend a lot of time thinking over some
Yeah.
heavy things, right? So,
Well,
and I appreciate you talking with me about it because one of the things I wanted to do was talk with different people in front of the church. I don't know if you're up to that one day, but one of the things I want to do is not just the easy things, not just the fun things, right? We want to tackle some real issues that people are going through. And so on Thanksgiving, I think it's fitting that we talk a little bit about, do we trust God? Can we doubt Him? Is it okay to question? Sometimes in the church we get the idea that you're just supposed to believe, and if you don't, then you don't have very strong faith. I think that's a misconception of what faith is, and so I just want to talk to you a little bit about that and see what your ideas are.
Yeah, well, I've had a few seasons in life where doubt has been really big.
Well, that can't be. You were pastor,
Ordained pastor, right?
right?
Yeah, work in the ministry full time, but it's there. And what I've come to understand, and I believe is true, is that the doubt itself isn't the bad thing, right?
I think it's actually good.
Part of the journey,
Yeah.
and you can take a bad turn, right? And it's just like suffering isn't like it sucks, right? But it's not the bad thing, but it can go good or it can go negative. Same with doubt. The doubt itself is not the bad thing.
Yeah.
If it's done right, and often we would need help to do it right, I would think.
Well, I think in the scriptures you see it, especially in the Old Testament, right? Like David writes a Psalm 73. He's like, why do the wicked prosper? Like they're doing all these things and they're cheating this and doing that. They shouldn't, and they succeed. And here I'm trying to do the right thing and I got nothing but trouble. It's like, that's not fair. Like, where is God in all that, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a problem for him to question that and struggle with that, but...
Yeah. Well, in there, he's doubting. There's two potential things he's doubting. He's doubting is God real?
Yeah.
Or he's doubting, is my understanding of God correct?
we don't do enough to separate those sometimes,
right?
right?
Because that's a major thing. Because if my understanding of God is incorrect,
Yep.
it is a really good thing for that to come into doubt,
100%.
right?
We use that in evangelism sometimes, right? So if you have people who
Yeah.
are of other faith or religious background that isn't following Jesus, then we would ask them, like, what do you really think about this situation?
How does this work?
Yeah.
Is it actually true? Because,
Yeah.
even say here's I believe a theological statement: we're all guilty of idolatry if our understanding of God is incorrect or incomplete. Right? That's a serious thought, right? Like, so if my understanding of God is out of balance, more in the direction of love without all the other attributes, I'm worshiping an idol created in my desired image of God.
In your own likeness and image, how you
That's right.
portray God, not necessarily how he is.
Yeah, and so then when that image of God that's in my mind isn't lining up with what I'm observing in the world, either I'm observing incorrectly or I understand God incorrectly. And then what can happen on the negative side is, oh, my understanding of God is whatever, but this is happening. This is real, I can feel this, I can touch this, therefore God is false. And that's where it goes sour,
Oftentimes.
off
Yep.
the rails. But then if this is my understanding of God, this is what I see happening and experience and go, right?
Agreed.
And then you work on it and go, oh, my understanding of God is in error.
Almost always it's flawed because our perception is based on our experience, not on the scriptures how it should be, right? And so what happens is we look at it and we think, like David does, look at everybody else. They're succeeding and they're doing all these things to get there, and I'm doing the right thing and I'm not getting there. So either God doesn't exist, or he doesn't love me, or he's not powerful enough to do the things he says he does, right? And so we then have a wrong impression of what God's character and nature is based on what our experience is, because we put more faith in the tangible than we do in the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's a situation where doubting is good for us,
Yeah.
right? And that can be all sorts of things. Like, I was just thinking that you can doubt that I made this, right? But based on my testimony, and there's my signature there,
Yeah.
but it could all be a fraud, right? Yeah, you need your glasses to examine, but can you even tell that that's my signature? Because what if that's just some weird scribbles?
It's, yeah. I believe you.
But eventually you have to believe or not.
There's a choice to be made, right?
And then so during the doubt process, say you were to doubt that I made that, you'd look at the rest of my life and go, well, does he do anything else woodworking?
You don't have any other tools, you don't have any other pieces that you made, but you made this.
Yeah, which, though it looks simple, again, you have to take my word on it, not doubt. A piece like this is a difficult piece to turn, right? So are there...
It looks like
and
you
you can
made
examine my other pieces.
Yeah.
It's like, are there lower level pieces? Are there
Agreed.
simpler pieces? Are there other pieces? Does he do anything else in his life that makes woodworking stuff? You know,
Right.
and if I didn't, then you go, I really doubt more.
Or question that.
But if you do all those questions and they all line up, it's like you end up actually with more assurance that I've made that piece.
Well, it's interesting because Doubting Thomas did that, right? He's looking at the facts and he's like, wait a second, like resurrections don't happen all the time. And you're like, I saw him die, we buried him, like what's the deal here? And they're like, we 2,000 years later go, oh, you're so foolish, why didn't you just believe? Well, he just questioned. And when he was given information, when he was given the facts, he didn't even put his fingers in the hole. He just said, my Lord and my God, I believe. He chose to believe based on the evidence. And that, I don't think, is lacking in faith.
Yeah. And it's to just believe, I would say I don't have enough faith. To just believe, like, even if a miracle worker was to come and we were to verify all his miracles as not fraudulent things, was to next month, okay? Miracle worker for 3 years, he heals people, he just like talks to you and your cancer goes away, you know, like that kind of thing. And we were to verify all those things, right? Because there would be lots of doubt, right? we call them charlatans usually, right?
Well, and we should doubt. We should. The Bible talks about testing the spirits, right? Making sure that what you're
Making sure that that's
Yep.
not real. But say that miracle worker was an amazing teacher and he was here for 3 years and then he died.
Yep.
And then now there's people saying that he's alive. I'd be like, you got to show me some other things
Right.
here to, right? Like I would identify or be right alongside Thomas going, well, I haven't seen him yet. And people just don't come back from the dead. Like the thing that we are asking people to ourselves to believe and others to believe when we evangelize is a huge thing to go, hey, this is against all known physical reality that we know.
Sometimes when you grow up in the church and you go most Sundays, you hear the story over and over again. It gets embedded there, and you're like, oh yeah, it's just the story.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that background and someone introduces it to you, you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have that questioning, that doubting, because there's a difference between the question and the argument, right?
Yeah.
To say, well, is that true, is one thing. But in order to say, like, I don't believe that's true, or that can't be true, you're going into a whole different step,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because doubting that God has said something is so different than saying, no, that's not true. So, right? Because if you tell me something or send a message, right here it's harder to doubt, but say you send me a text and it doesn't line up with how you normally communicate, I'd be like, was that really Dave? You know, or did someone get his phone? Right? Because I would be
That
doubting
happens, right?
that would be there. But if we move past the doubt and the doubt is proven reasonably to be true, to then say, no, that's not true, now you're in this state of disobedience and arguing, right? Because you can doubt that God said something and go, God, did you say that? Did I hear you
Is
right?
that really true? Is that what actually happened? Doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand.
Don't understand. That's
Right?
a fair thing. Don't understand.
But
But then if God says, don't do this, and we say, no, that's not true.
I'm gonna do it anyway.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But then we are still calling it doubting. That's just disobedience,
Right.
in a sense, right?
And we cloak it in terms so that we don't look
cloak
bad.
it in terms of doubting, and
Yeah.
or it's like, well, did God really say that? And I'm sure Satan said that,
I've heard that, yeah.
right, to cause doubt, and then from that doubt used wrongly turns into disobedience
Yeah.
and sin. That's where doubt can get off the rails and lead to destruction, because you're now doubting the good, you're doubting the true, right? And then you say, well, it's not true. I don't believe you, or the hubris of this, say, no, you are wrong.
Right.
To argue with God is like, that's so different than, God, are you real? Did you actually speak to me? Have you reached out to me? To being like, no, God, you don't reach out to people like this. It's such a different...
It's a large turn, right, on that
Yeah.
argument. Because it's one thing for me to be like, okay, I don't understand. Like, I've been praying for healing for this situation, and, you know, it says in the Bible that you love us and you're powerful and you want good things for us, so how come you're not healing us? That doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. That's a far turn from then going, well, if you're not going to do something for me, then I don't exist. I don't believe you exist at all, right? Like you're going completely from not understanding to making a choice of disbelief to saying, I'm not getting this, therefore I don't believe you exist at all. Even though there's verifiable evidence to the contrary, that he does care, does love, does do things. And many times what happens is we think, oh, because I do this, like I'm a good person, I'm a loving person, I love someone by doing this, God's better than me at all those things because he's God, therefore he would do that and more. But that doesn't necessarily mean he would do that thing. Just because I think it's loving doesn't mean it's loving. Just because I think it's full of patience, kindness, whatever, doesn't mean that that's how God views things.
What we're doing there in that kind of situation is doing the best we can with the knowledge we have, right?
And it's a very fine line, because none of us are perfect in our theology. And yet at the same time, whatever version of that idolatry we do, it has to be in a sense where we can then work on verifying it with the scriptures and submitting ourselves to the Spirit, right?
Yeah.
So that we're getting as much as we can, as close as we can.
And I think you're on something really important there for how to, it's a big question because we've said there's good doubt, bad doubt, or at least the directions. So then how do we have healthy, successful doubting periods of life?
Yeah.
And the thing is theology.
Because I would
Going
say
back-
most of us,
go back to the basics.
100%. Because I think most of us only have bad bouts. Like we only are, we're very rarely questioning God in the sense of trying to understand Him. We're generally asking Him why He's not doing the things we want Him to do. Because we have sort of, like when we pray for things, we usually have our preconceived idea of what that answer is supposed to be. And then when that's not the answer, we go right away to doubt, which is not the same as trying to wrestle with why He's not doing that.
Yeah. But so then if that comes to doubt, like you've just said, so an unanswered prayer or situation or evil in the world or whatever brings us to doubt. Now in the Psalms, we can see it in quite a few Psalms where it's like, God, this sucks.
Yep.
Where are you? And then it goes into God is good. He did all these promises. He saved us many, many times.
Yep.
I still don't understand. There's a good reason for whatever's going on. Like that's a very
Very
crass,
vague, but yeah.
structure of many Psalms. And I think we can still do that in our lives.
100%.
Right, so we come to doubt and everything's like falling apart. We're like, this just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
But then we go, okay, theology, God is good. Okay?
Yeah.
Not just does good, He is the source of good.
Well,
God
and it isn't
is
based on
all
how
true.
It isn't based on what He does for me, right?
No,
like I
it's
look
just-
at it and go,
this is
"There's
just
not
who
good in
God-
my life."
That's right. Just
Right?
who God
He is good. His character.
He is the source of good. He's
Yeah.
the source of truth.
Yeah.
He doesn't access truth outside of himself like a good preacher would do, right? He's the source of truth. He's the
Well,
source
truth
of
is
wisdom.
truth because it's His nature.
It's coming from
right?
Him, yeah. He's wisdom, the source of wisdom, which is the most best thing that can, like a wise choice is the most good choice based on the information you have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, if it's based on the information that an all-knowing being has, well, then it's perfect
Right.
wisdom, right? And then you go through, well, He's everywhere, omniscient, He's wrathful, He's loving, He's all those sorts of things. And then you end up, hopefully, with a better understanding of God. And then, hopefully, through that doubt and doing that theology, you go, my understanding or interpretation is off. And that's why
that's
it
what
doesn't line
changes.
up with reality and my
So your
perception.
circumstances don't always change, but your understanding of your relationship with God changes, and then the doubt disappears. Because
yeah,
it has the chance
minimizes.
to disappear. So,
Right.
so what happens though is that in Psalm 73 and others that you're talking about, if you read long enough in those Psalms, the narrator gets back to the character and nature of God. He's saying, this isn't making sense, I don't understand, but like you said, God did these things for us in the past. As a nation, He's promised these things, and I don't get it, but I get Him, and I'm going to trust Him. And that's where the faith comes in. It's not a blind faith that you hope things will happen the way you want them to happen. It's putting your faith in God to do the things He says He'll do, regardless of whether you understand them or agree with them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's hard for us in the church, because in the church, many times, what we do is we tell people what to think. If we tell people what to think instead of teaching them how to think, it's a lot easier to control them, and it's a lot easier to then not have doubts, because I said so. Like, just do it. What's wrong with your faith, right? The problem with that is, one, it's not the way we're supposed to do it, but secondly, when they leave that place and they go somewhere else, so our young people, for example, when they go away to university, they have a different voice telling them what to think, and so they jump ship to that because they respect that person as a good teacher, he's a good person, and so then that authority transfers, and we lament the fact that we're losing kids to university and atheism and humanism, but we're part of the cog there because we're not teaching them that it's okay to question, that it's okay to have doubts, that it's okay to struggle and wrestle through that. This is how you wrestle through those things. This is how you think, not just what to think.
Yeah. And that's actually a really good, where I've come to understand this as a really good test of a good leader and good teacher or a good authority, is someone who allows you to doubt and ask the questions. So a tyrant will say, you have to believe this, and if you don't, done. You're canceled, right? Or you're executed or whatever.
Yep.
Right? But a good leader, good teacher is able to handle a doubt and then answer it, right? Instead of saying, you just have to believe this, you have to believe this, you have to believe this. That's a cult, or the potential of a cult. Now, there are times, due to speed or whatever, it's like, this is the answer, we'll explain it later. We'll explain the laws of physics after you get off the road. Because it's like, get off the road, don't doubt me, do it now, right? For a parent-child or whatever situation. And then later, the kid will go, well, why do I have to get off the road? And it's like, well, here's why. Big things, mass impacts, away we go.
Well, if you're going to have someone lead you, you have to let them lead you, right? That doesn't mean there isn't checks and balances, but they have to lead. If they're a good leader, they should be explaining the process to you along the way.
And to be able to handle doubts. And that's why I still say God, as a good leader, handles the doubts.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't bother him.
Whereas an evil God just says, I'll kill you otherwise. I'll kill you. If you don't believe me, I'll kill you.
You don't do everything that is required, then it's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at that, it's important to separate too, just how we feel as opposed to what we're thinking, right? Because in the world, too often what we do is we feel a certain way, and then as a result of that, we act a certain way, and then we justify it by thinking and stating that that's okay behavior. So I get up on the wrong side of the bed, I'm owly and grouchy, and so then I get up and I'm a jerk to my family, and then it's like, well, I didn't sleep last night, so there's justification for my action because I felt a certain way. When you look into the scriptures, Philippians 4, it talks about the idea of thinking a certain way. Think about these things. And then when you think that, put it into practice. Act this way. And then the peace of God will come. Right? Like the peace of God isn't something that just is there miraculously, and then out of that, then you act a certain way, and then you understand this relationship with God, and you have no doubts. It's the other way around. We take what the scripture says, and we think on it, and then we act on it, whether you feel like it or not. And then the joy comes in the morning. Then the peace of God is there. Then the emotion follows after, right? Yeah. And many times we don't separate our doubts, our questions, our wrestling with something, and the emotion that we feel going through it, right? Because it can be really depressing. It can be really sad for us to continually, for some of us, for weeks, months, years, have asked God for deliverance, and He doesn't seem to answer, at least not the way we want, right? Yeah. And then your emotion, your feeling gets involved in that, and that's a hard thing too.
And we quite often don't doubt our doubts, right? Because you're bringing in feelings and emotion and stuff, which is, they're there, right? Now, they're not a good foundation for many things, right? Without bringing checks and balances into our emotions, it can go to really sour really quickly, right? That's like in marriage. Most fights that are horrible are usually based on emotions and misinterpretations of what happened. Like this person did this, and they're like, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And right?
Yep.
But if you can check the emotions and bring the emotions to after the facts and stuff like that, then the emotions can really drive something that's true to be amazing.
Yep.
Right. But on the negative side of emotions, just to touch briefly on it, is of depression. And so this is what like a few seasons back, this was probably 6-8 months of where I was really doubting just the whole existence or the validity of Christianity. Even though, like, I'm growing up, I grew up in the faith, that sort of thing. And I'm just doubting that everything is on the table here, right? And it's quite dark. But I think there was doubt there for sure, but some of it is, I believe, depression. And it's a valid question to ask is, are you doubting God, or your relationship with whoever, or are you depressed, or both,
Yep.
right? Because now I'm not a clinician, I don't fully understand depression, but it's big, and it's a lens that interprets everything, our own feelings, everything that everybody says, the way we see situations, that sort of thing. So depression can be masked as a form of doubt, whereas, so you've said this to me,
Yep.
and my depression interprets it as, oh, he just wants to get something from me.
Right.
Right? So you're like, here, have this gift, and
Yep.
I'm like, what do you want from me?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
As a result of depression. Or you'll say, hey, come visit with us, and they're like, and depression says, oh, they just want to fill their numbers for the team.
Right.
They don't actually like me, right?
Yep.
That depression can do that. Now, with God or the Bible, that His Word, that depression can set in and be, God says, I love you, and then we're like, I'm just a lunatic. You know, how could He love me? I'm so horrible.
I don't even love me. How
I
could
don't
God
even
love me?
How
Yep.
could God, right?
Yep.
And so, now if it's slight depression, there might be an easy out. If it's severe depression, it's difficult.
Well, and I think-
it's a mix of things how to get out of
100%. But I think for the church, too often we have said, oh, no, you don't have depression, you just need more faith. And people who have needed help with depression have just tried to believe harder and have spiraled. And so if people have depression or think they have, as they go through this questioning, they should talk to their physician and find out, right, to get help chemically and physically in their body, as opposed to just thinking that it's only spiritual. There are sometimes spiritual things that affect us to have depression, so we have to figure out what that is. But don't just think it's one or the other, right? Investigate. And I think that's part of what we're talking about is it's okay to investigate all these things, to put it on the table. God isn't bothered by the fact that you might question or doubt. He is if you're in denial. Like if you hear the truth and then you reject it, that's completely different.
That's not true.
Right? So you think about the chief priests and the Pharisees. Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night and says, like, we know that you're from God because no one can do the miracles you're doing. Right?
We just think you're screwed up a
But-
little bit. We got to fix you.
Right? But
Yeah.
we're not going to believe in you. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like they did the right thing, but they did the wrong thing. So if they didn't believe that he was God, they should have crucified him. He was blaspheming.
Yeah.
But they knew that he was God because he was validated by the miracles that he did, but then they took it personally and then rejected him. There's a huge difference between not understanding the verse that Luke read for us, help my unbelief. Like I want to believe, I just don't know how, is different than going, like I know this is true, but I just don't want it in my life. I reject it, I deny it. And then calling that doubting, right? And I think that's what's happening with a lot of these pastors who are deconstructing their faith. It's just like, I don't want this because they've had a bad experience in their life, because they're questioning, they're unsure, they didn't get answers they wanted, and all of a sudden they're wrestling with their faith and walking away from it. But they're actually rejecting truth, which is different than questioning about their understanding.
And what's going on there, there's, say, God has revealed this, and we go, well, if this is true, I have to give up, or I should give up this as a result.
Yep.
So it's like, well, that's just not true.
Right.
So then I'm off the hook. I can have.
So if I read the scriptures and I think that I'm not allowed to do this, I can't do this, I have to do this, and I don't want to do those things, or I don't want that to affect my lifestyle, then if I reject God, I can do these things. Right?
Or tweak my understanding of God. Because
Yeah.
you don't have to do a wholesale rejection of God, like
Right.
the whole thing. It's just that aspect. And then,
For
of
sure.
course, that's idolatry,
Yeah.
again, with the incomplete or
Yeah.
untrue thing. So you
Perfect.
again go back to theology
Yep.
as how to get out of doubt.
And so we've come full circle. So, and I think that's a good thing to remind us as we close, is just going back to what the scriptures say about who God is and what his character and nature is. And as we embrace that, then the rejection or the denial will slow down, and the acceptance and the faith will grow.
Yeah.
Okay?
And Now, just in closing there, the happy side of doubt is if you come through doubt, it's you're
Yep.
so much stronger.
You're stronger, yep. Because you've tested
in
it.
that thing. You've tested it. Anybody else who calls into question, you're like, oh, yeah, I answered that question. Oh, I answered that. I figured that one out.
Right.
And it's still an infinite God. There's still going to be things where you're
And
like,
things don't always go the way we pray, right? So there's questions, and
Yeah.
that's okay, that's good. But we can trust him for the future, because he's already there.
Yeah.
Good.
So-
Thanks, man.